linear is dx by dt equals ax, right? And then we try to determine the phase portrait of the system. Okay, and how did the phase portrait look like? Let us quickly draw the phase portrait. This is x, this is t, this is x, this is t. And what we said is that for a greater than 0, your phase lines would look like this, which go to infinity. For a less than 0, your phase lines would all converge to x is equal to 0, right? Which means that I can write that the system has a bifurcation at a equal to 0. Now the question is, can we quantify it? Can I deduce? So this was a very simple equation, dx by dt equals ax. So it was pretty easy, or rather trivial, to reach this condition. But is it possible to actually derive this condition that a should be equal to 0? Okay, so let's do this. So our equation is dx by dt equals ax, and I will declare this as f of ax. Okay, so the first step in determining the condition for for equilibrium as well as the condition for bifurcation is to declare this equation with a function f of ax equals f of ax equals ax, right? So now the condition for equilibrium. The condition for equilibrium is f of a x equal to 0, right? Which means a x equal to 0. In other words, x equilibrium is 0, right? And this is what we also saw in both the cases. X equilibrium is 0, x equilibrium is 0. One is stable, another is unstable. The first one is unstable, the second one is stable, right? Now, what is the condition for bifurcation? Condition for bifurcation. And the condition for bifurcation is del f by del x, right? At equilibrium. This is important. Del f by del x at equilibrium should be equal to 0. This is the condition for bifurcation. Let's see what do you get. Del by del x of ax at x is equal to 0. This is equal to a, and this should be equal to 0. So we straight away get the condition that the condition for bifurcation is a is equal to 0, right? So then we know the condition for equilibrium, which is x equal to 0, and we know that about xe equal to 0, the derivative of the function f of ax with respect to x should be 0. So that will give you an equation in terms of the bifurcation parameter. In this case, it simply comes out to be a, and you set a is equal to 0, and this is the condition for bifurcation which we wrote. The system has a bifurcation at a equals 0, right? Now we also see that a, so in dx by dt equals ax. A is the eigenvalue. A is the eigenvalue, right? And then what is the condition for stability? So condition for stability, A greater than 0 is your unstable system, right? Let's go up and see. A greater than 0 is unstable. You see this one is unstable. And A less than 0 is stable, right? So therefore, the condition for stability is that the eigenvalue lambda, eigenvalue lambda should be greater than 0. And for A less than 0, the system is stable, which means that eigenvalue lambda must be less than 0. So the system is stable. So what exactly is the meaning of bifurcation? The meaning of bifurcation is that at bifurcation, the system goes from unstable to stable or stable to unstable, and the eigenvalue becomes 0. Right? So this is what we can easily conclude from the linear for a linear system. Now let's do the same thing for a non-linear system. So and as an example of a non-linear system, let's say we have dx by dt equals ax minus x cube, right? So this is a non-linear system, and let me declare this as f of ax. So the condition for equilibrium. Condition for equilibrium is f of ax should be equal to 0, which means x a minus x squared should be equal to 0, which means x equilibrium is 0, or x equilibrium is root of a, or x equilibrium is minus of root a. Right? So the system has the system described by dx by dt equals ax minus x cube has three equilibrium solutions: x equal to 0, x equal to root a, and x equal to minus of root a. Right? Somebody has the mic on, please put it off. Now the question is, what is the nature of equilibrium solutions? Right? Which means stable or unstable, right? So we'll do the same analysis which we did previously. So you will determine the eigenvalue. And what was the eigenvalue? You solved for the condition for bifurcation, okay? And the eigenvalue greater than 0 gave you about the equilibrium point, gave you the unstable system, and the equilibrium and the eigenvalue about the equilibrium point being less than 0 gave you a stable system. Well, let's do the same thing. So I have f of ax equals ax minus x cube. So now the condition for bifurcation. Okay, so what is the condition for bifurcation? Del f by del x at equilibrium solutions should be equal to 0. Okay, which means a minus 3x squared at equilibrium solutions should be equal to 0. This is the condition for bifurcation. So now let's take every case individually. Okay, so first xe equal to 0. Xe equal to 0. So what is my lambda? Lambda is del f by del x, the eigenvalue at xe equal to 0, and this is equal to, when I substitute x is equal to 0, I get a. Right? When I substitute xe equal to 0, I get the answer as a. So that means I can write xe is equal to 0 is stable when a is less than 0 and xe is equal to 0 is unstable when a is greater than 0. Right? A straightforward conclusion. So the solution xe equal to 0 would be stable when a is less than 0, and the solution xc is equal to 0 would be unstable when a is greater than 0. Have you seen this previously? Yes. Let's go and see the phase portrait of dx by dt is equal to ax. So xe is equal to 0 is an unstable solution when a is greater than 0, and the exact opposite of it for a less than 0. Right? So such condition definitely exists for the same equilibrium solution. But what about the other equilibrium solution? So the second equilibrium solution xe equal to root a. So lambda would be del f by del x at xe equal to root a, and this will be equal to what? A minus 3a, which is minus 2a. Minus 2a. Right? Minus 2a. So xe equal to root a is stable when a is greater than 0, right? Because I have a negative sign here. There is a negative sign here. So now the condition becomes opposite, and xe equal to root a is unstable when a is less than 0. Fine. And finally, I have the third condition. Xe equal to minus of root a. So lambda will be del f by del x at xe equal to minus of root a, which is well, the same thing. It's x squared. So minus root a squared. So you will get the same answer. This is minus 2a. Right? So then I can write xe equals minus root a is stable when a is greater than 0 and xe equal to minus root a is unstable when a is less than 0. Fine. Now I can incorporate all of these conditions. You see, so let us start from the beginning. Our equation was dx by dt equals ax minus x cubed. I declared it as f of ax. The first thing for determining the bifurcation is to determine the condition for equilibrium. Right? So the condition for equilibrium was f of ax is equal to 0. So I solved for ax minus x cubed is equal to 0. I got three equilibrium solutions: xe equal to 0, xe equal to root a, and xe equal to minus root a. Fine. Now we wanted to know whether x is equal to 0 plus or minus root a are stable or unstable, for which I will go for the condition for bifurcation. So again, I declared f of ax is equal to ax minus x cubed. The condition for bifurcation is del f by del x at point of equilibrium should be 0. So for a generic condition which I got is a minus 3x squared at xe should be equal to 0. And then I solved for this condition at x is equal to 0, xe is equal to plus root a, and x is equal to minus root a. And I got 6 conditions. X is equal to 0 is stable when a less than 0. X is equal to 0 is unstable when a is greater than 0. X is equal to root a is unstable when a is greater than 0. X is equal to root a is unstable when a is less than 0. And finally, xe is equal to minus root a is stable when a is greater than 0, and x is equal to minus root a when when a is less than 0. Right? Now, using this, I will draw what is called a bifurcation diagram. Okay? Bifurcation diagram. And what does bifurcation diagram tell me? It gives me the equilibrium solution. Solution as a function of bifurcation parameter. Bifurcation parameter. Okay, how do the equilibrium solutions vary as a function of bifurcation parameter? Well, I already have this xe equal to 0, xe equal to root of a, and xe equal to minus of root a. Right? So equilibrium solution xe, bifurcation parameter root a. So ultimately what I'm going to have is a diagram in which what I will have on the x-axis is a, my bifurcation parameter is a, and what I will have on the y-axis is the equilibrium solution. This is not xe, this is not x, this is xe, equilibrium solution. Right? So now which one is xe is equal to 0 axis? So let me do one thing. Let me make this. So this is xe is equal to 0 axis. Right? X x just a second yeah, xe equal to 0. Right? The second solution would be xe is equal to root a. I know that xe equal to root a looks like this, and x is equal to minus root a would look like this. Right? So let me write it down. Xe equal to root a and xe equal to minus of root a. Right? Now my bifurcation plot, which is the plot of equilibrium solution versus the bifurcation parameter, is ready, except that I do not know the natures of xe is equal to 0, xe is equal to root a, and x is equal to minus of root a. Well, I'll do one thing. I will draw arrows. Right? So xe is equal to 0. Xe is equal to 0 was stable when a is less than 0 and unstable when a is greater than 0 here. Right? So let me draw the arrows. Xe is equal to 0 is stable when a is less than 0 and unstable when a is greater than 0. Stable for a less than 0 and unstable for a greater than 0. Right? Then xe equal to root a is stable when a is greater than 0 and unstable when a is less than 0, right? So a greater than 0 is stable, but there is no arm in the a less than 0 side, so you only have this thing. So this is stable. And we know that the same condition was there. I remember it. We will cross check it. A greater than 0, a greater than 0 stable. Fine, right? So this completes our bifurcation diagram. Let us remind ourselves of how we did it. How does a bifurcation plot obtained? A bifurcation plot is a plot of the bifurcation parameter and the equilibrium solution. Equilibrium solutions where x is equal to 0, so you got a horizontal line. X is equal to root a, the upper curve. X is equal to minus root a, the lower curve. Now the only thing which is left is to know whether a particular arm is stable or unstable. For that, you go and check the condition for bifurcation and you draw the arrows accordingly. Okay. So this was your bifurcation diagram, and this particular nature of bifurcation, is called pitchfork bifurcation. Okay. Why is it called a pitchfork bifurcation? Because it looks like a pitchfork. In India, we don't use pitchfork much. So I have a few images for you. So this is a pitchfork is a agricultural or a farm equipment. So a pitchfork looks like this. You see, you have a lot of examples here. This particular example, for example. So this is how, when the mathematicians imagine that this is how it looks like. Okay, so you have one arm here and this arm goes and you have three arms here. So one and then three. Okay, so that's why it's called a pitchfork bifurcation. Okay, now next example is, you see how if the equation changes, the nature of your bifurcation and the nature of solutions completely change. So our next example is dx by dt equals a minus x squared. Now we will solve this very quickly. We know how to do this. So f of ax and condition for bifurcation, condition for equilibrium, f of ax equal to 0, which means a minus x squared is equal to 0, which means xe is root of a and xe is minus of root a. Only two solutions, right? Now condition for bifurcation, del f by del x at xe should be equal to 0. So first xe equal to root a, right? So del f by del x at xe equal to root a is minus 2x minus 2x, which is equal to minus 2 root a, right? Minus 2 root a. So now root a can only be positive. So you write here xe is equal to root a is always stable, right? Xe is equal to root a is always stable. And then second, xe equal minus root a. So del f by del x at xe equal minus root a. This is equal to what? 2 root a. This is 2 root a, and I can write here xe equal to 2 root a is always unstable. Right? So now how do I draw a bifurcation diagram? Let me draw the bifurcation diagram here. So I have here a, I have here xe, and the two solutions are root a and minus root a. Okay, we already had that. We know that they look something like this. This and this, right? So then I can go here and check that x is equal to plus root a is always stable, and the other way around for x is equal to minus root a. So I can write here this stable and this unstable. Pretty simple, right? And finally, when we take the third case, how you see that there would be a drastic change in the feature of the bifurcation diagram. So our example is dx by dt equals ax minus x squared, right? So first example was ax minus x cubed, second a is minus x squared, now ax minus x squared. We already saw just a second. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you can see everything, right?
Yes, sir. We can see you.
Yeah, fine. So now we have ax. So we started with ax is equal to, let's see, we started with ax minus x cube. You got a pitchfork bifurcation, horizontal line x is equal to 0 was a solution. Ax then dx by dt is equal to ax squared. You saw only these two arms, and these two were the arms. And then let's see what happens in the third case. I'll declare this as f of ax. So condition for equilibrium, f of ax equal to 0, which means x a minus x equal to 0, which means xe equal to 0 and xe equal to a. Right? So in this case, I have two equilibrium solutions. Now condition for bifurcation. Condition for bifurcation. Del f by del x, del f by del x at xe should be 0, right? So now first xe is equal to 0. So then in this case, what I have is del f by del x at xe equal to 0 is a minus 2 xe, which is equal to a, right? Which is equal to a, which means that xe is equal to 0 is stable for a less than 0, and xe equal to 0 is unstable for a greater than 0. Fine. Okay, next. Xe is equal to a del f by del x at xe is equal to a is a minus 2xe, which is a minus 2a, which is minus a, right? So xe is equal to a is stable for, now it would be opposite, a greater than 0, and xe is equal to a is unstable for a less than 0. Fine. So now this puts us in a position to develop the bifurcation diagram, and you will see that this bifurcation diagram is absolutely different from every single bifurcation diagram that you drew today. So let us draw the bifurcation diagram. So you have a, you have xe. So I have two solutions. X is equal to 0 and x is equal to a, right? So my solutions would look like this. X is equal to 0 and x is equal to a is y is equal to x, right? Okay, this is very tricky. Okay, fine. And now what I have to do is I have to label this as stable or unstable. So x is equal to xe. So this is xe is equal to 0 and this is xe equal to a. My condition is that for x is equal to 0, stable for a less than 0. So I have this. Stable and this unstable, right? And then for x is equal to a, stable for a greater than 0, stable for a greater than 0. So this is this stable and this is this unstable. You see how different all of these behaviors are, right? This particular bifurcation diagram is very different from the other bifurcation diagrams, and this particular bifurcation diagram is called transcritical bifurcation. Okay, this is called transcritical bifurcation. Why is it called transcritical bifurcation? Because it looks like there is a point here, which is the critical point, right? So here you have a critical point. Okay, and then what happens? You go from stable to unstable via passing through the critical point, and similarly on the other arm you go from stable to unstable, with this being the critical point. Okay, and therefore this particular nature is called transcritical bifurcation. Okay, so now in order to develop, so let us summarize, in order to develop any bifurcation diagram, what you will do, you will write the condition for equilibrium, which is just f of ax, and f of ax is nothing but del x by del t. F of ax is equal to 0. Then you will write the condition for and the solution of f of ax is equal to 0 are equilibrium solutions, and you have to just plot these equilibrium solutions as functions of the bifurcation parameters, right? Then you will need to identify whether the bifurcation, the arms in the bifurcation diagram are stable or unstable. For that, you will use the condition for bifurcation, which is del f by del x at point of equilibrium, and this is actually analogous to the eigenvalue of your system. If this value is greater than 0, then your arm is unstable. If this value is less than 0, your arm is stable. Okay, so this is the general procedure. Now this was all about nonlinear systems which are first order. Okay, can we in an analogous manner develop such expressions or do this analysis for non-linear systems which are of higher order? Okay, so let us consider a two-state system, two-state non-linear system. Okay, so an example would be dx by dt. I'm writing here dx by dt equal to x squared minus y squared minus 1 and dy by dt equal to 2y. Okay. Now, how to analyze this system of equations? So the order of the system is 2. There are a lot of students who made this mistake in the examination, where it was a very simple question to determine the order of the system. There were 3 equations which were given, and therefore several students wrote that the order of the system is 3. It's not correct. Those 3 equations were second order equations. So therefore the order of system was 6. So d2x1 by dt squared would be converted to x1 and y1, where y1 was dx1 by dt. So your dynamical variables would be x1, x2, x3, y1, y2, y3, where yi was dxi by dt. So the dynamical variables had 6 components in the vector, and accordingly the number of equations were 6, and the order of the system was 6, not 3. In this particular case, you have 2 first order systems, first order equations. So therefore the order of the system is 2, and the system is non-linear. So how do I go about solving this? Well, my first step was to declare dx by dt as f of x. In this case, there is no bifurcation parameter. In this case, there is no bifurcation parameter. So I will just denote this as f of xy. And I cannot simply do this. I will have to do this also, g of xy, right? F of xy, g of xy. Now the condition for equilibrium. Condition for equilibrium. The condition for equilibrium is that together, not individually, but together, f of xy should be equal to 0 and g of xy should be equal to 0, right? So find from equation, so from g of xy, because it doesn't have x in it, is equal to 0, I get y equilibrium as 0, right? Y equilibrium as 0. Fine. Now from f of xy is equal to 0 and y equilibrium as 0, what I get is x squared minus 1 is equal to 0, which means x equilibrium is plus 1 and x equilibrium is minus 1. Right? So therefore, my equilibrium solutions what are my equilibrium solutions? 1, 0 transpose and minus 1, 0 transpose. Right? I have two equilibrium solutions, 1, 0 transpose. So let me write this as equilibrium solution 1 and equilibrium solution 2. I have now, and that's why this is called a two-state system. You have two equilibrium solutions. The first equilibrium solution is 1, 0. The second equilibrium solution is minus 1, 0. Now I need to determine the nature of these two solutions. Right? Now let's see what did we do. How have we been doing this? We will go to the top one, and when we analyze this, what we did was for a linear system, we saw that in dx by dt equals ax, see here, in dx by dt equals ax, a is the eigenvalue, right? A is the eigenvalue, and then you decided upon the stability based upon the eigenvalues of the system, right? So what will you do when you have or how would you determine the eigenvalue of a system which is multidimensional? This is the question. Okay, so the question is, how will you determine the eigenvalue? So the question is this. Eigenvalue, in fact, values for a higher order system. How would you do that? Well, I have f of x y is x squared minus y squared minus 1 or plus 1? Minus 1, right? This is minus 1 and g of xy is 2y. So let's see carefully what am I doing. I have del f by del x, and this is 2x. Del g, or it doesn't make a difference, del f by del y. This will be minus 2y. Then I will write del g by del x. This will be 0 and del g by del y. This is equal to 2. Right? So I took all the possible first derivatives. What was the first derivative in the linear case? Df by dx. That was the first derivative. Here all the combinations of first derivatives, and this will give rise to my Jacobian matrix. Jacobian. So J, and Jacobian is simply 2x minus 2y 0 2. Right? So I will determine the Jacobian by determining the partial derivatives of the individual functions. Now what I do is the value of Jacobian at E1 will be, so my E1 was 1 0. So this is 2, this is 0, this is 0, this is 2. And the Jacobian of the value of the Jacobian at E2 was what? -1. So this is -2, 0, 0, 2. Right? And now what I need to do is I need to determine the eigen values of the Jacobian. I am extending the one-dimensional or first order system to a higher order system. I determine the Jacobian and I determine the Jacobian at that particular equilibrium solution. Now you can always determine that I know for this case lambda 1 will be greater than 0 and you have a repeated value, repeated eigenvalues. Okay, and they are positive. Well, repeated or not is not very crucial here. What is important is that the eigenvalue is values are positive, and here lambda 1 greater than 0, lambda 2 less than 0, right? So one is positive, the other one is negative. So now how will I comment upon this solution of non-equilibrium systems? Okay, so the behavior of non-linear system. This is very important. Close to the equilibrium solution. Now what is important is that you have a wildly non-linear system. You cannot comment really on what will happen to the system when you deviate far from your equilibrium solution. But you can always tell what will happen to the system when you deviate a little from the equilibrium solution. Okay, and because you are implementing a control system, you expect that the deviation is not going to be very, very large because your control system has to quickly come into action, right? So close to the equilibrium solution, your system is running at steady state, which basically means that you are at equilibrium. You are at equilibrium solution, and if you deviate from equilibrium solution, what you want to know is whether your system is going to blow up and diverge or it would come back. So what you are basically going to do is you are going to analyze lambda 1, lambda 2, and from our previous analysis, let's quickly draw what we already know from our previous analysis. So from our previous analysis, we say that lambda 1 greater than 0, lambda 2 less than 0 is a system which looks like this. This is what we studied for linear systems. This is saddle behavior, right? And we know that saddle behavior is actually unstable. So your system is going to be unstable. Lambda 1 greater than 0, lambda 2 less than 0. Then lambda 1 greater than 0, lambda 2 greater than 0, you are going to have this behavior. Source, and the third one the sink behavior, lambda 1 less than 0, lambda 2 less than 0. This is the sink behavior, right? I hope you remember all of these phase diagrams. Now, in case the eigenvalues become imaginary or complex numbers, then lambda is IA, pure imaginary number, you have a center solution. Lambda is equal to A plus IB, A greater than 0, you have a source solution. So this is source, in fact, spiral source. Spiral source. This is center. And the third case, lambda is equal to A plus IB, A less than 0 is spiral sink, which means would be like this. Okay, so again, let us summarize. How would you analyze a non-linear system and its dynamics? Well, you will do the extension of this dynamics from one dimensions or first order to higher dimensions. We first had only dx by dt, which we declared as f of x. Here we will have f of x, y, and the second function you declare it as g of x, y. The condition for equilibrium will be the simultaneous solution to f of xy equal to 0. It can be f of a, b, xy, depending upon whether or not you have bifurcation parameters in your system. And you will simultaneously solve for the null space of the system. Here we got the vectors instead of equilibrium solutions as simple scalars. You will now get vectors. The two vectors were 1, 0 transpose and -1, 0 transpose. Next, you determine the eigenvalues. For a first order system, you can determine the eigenvalue just by differentiating the function with respect to x. Here, since you have 2 dimensions, you will determine the Jacobian. For n dimension, it will be an n by n Jacobian matrix. You determine the value of the you determine the eigenvalue at the equilibrium vectors. Okay, and then you determine whether the eigenvalues are all positive, all negative, positive, negative, complex or real. If it is complex, purely imaginary, or complex number, if it is complex, whether the real part is greater than 0 or less than 0. And that's how you will determine you will comment upon the nature of the solutions for a non-equilibrium system, for a non-linear system close to the equilibrium solution. Okay, fine. So we'll take up a question based upon all of these concepts, but we'll take a break. Currently it's 57 minutes past 11. Let's start at 5 minutes past 12. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Sir, a small thing, sir. Hello.
Yes.
If we have two values for y also, then we'll be having 4 equilibrium solutions vector, sir.
No.
In this case, we have y is equal to 0, right? What if we have 2 values?
Okay. Yeah. True. In that case, so you are basically having a system having multiple solutions. Yeah, that's possible.
4 Jacobian matrix will get then.
Yes, true.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue. Am I audible? Can anybody confirm?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
good. Thank you. So today's problem, it has been uploaded in MS Teams platform. I'm displaying it here. So the problem is on chemical reactor analysis. Incidentally, we have an entire subject on chemical reactor analysis in chemical engineering department. I hope many of you are taking that course because it's an elective course. We'll take one very interesting aspect of chemical reactor operations, uh, which uh, uh, which makes the analysis of its dynamics very important. Okay, so uh, we take the case of a jacketed CSTR. Okay, so let me draw the system for you. I'm sure the chemical engineering students are well aware of this whole setup. For instrumentation students, let me draw it. So it's a jacketed CSTR. So CSTR stands for continuous stirred tank reactor. Reactor is just a fancy term for a vessel in which reaction takes place. You don't need to worry too much about the term reactor, but it's continuously stirred tank, which means that it would be equipped with a stirrer. So there would be a stirrer. It's a continuous reactor. So reactors can be operated in two modes. Batch mode, which means that you dump in some amount of reactants to it. You close all the valves, let the reaction take place. Then you stop the reactor from working. You take out the products. That's the batch mode. The continuous mode is the one in which the reactants continuously come in and the products continuously go out. Right. So let's say the level of the liquid is this much. So you have liquid coming in. You have liquid going out. So continuous operation, stirred because it's a stirred, tank because it's a tank, reactor because there is a reaction in which takes place. And it is jacketed. This is important. Then it is going to be a cylindrical vessel, and outside this vessel you will have a jacket. Okay, so you will have a jacket. And what's the purpose of the jacket? The purpose of the jacket is to either cool the contents of this liquid in the reactor or to heat the contents of the liquid in the reactor. Okay, so there would be a cooling fluid or a heating fluid which will go. So here is the inlet, here is the outlet. Fine. So we'll try to understand its dynamical behavior. CSTRs are meant to be operated at steady state. Okay, so what is the meaning of this term that CSTRs are meant to be operated at steady state? This particular operation is a continuous operation, which means that you start your plant and for several days to several months, the plant would continuously keep on running and you will keep on taking the products out without changing anything. So there would be a lot of pumps. The pumps will continuously supply the reactants. There would be pumps which would continuously take the products out, and your control system will maintain a steady state in the reactor, and you don't stop the reactor. The operation continues for several months together, and then there would be a shut off period in which you will shut the plant off. You will do the maintenance work, and then you will start the plant again. So when you stop the operation and when you start the operation, at both the phases, there would be transients in your system, which means that there would be variables which would change with time. Okay, so we are interested in understanding the transients. Okay, so however, before the steady state is reached, there are transients in the system which must die out with time. Okay, now due to the provision of heating or cooling by the fluid in the jacket, this is called isothermal reactor because you want a constant temperature inside the reactor. Okay, it's also for that reason called a diabatic reactor. And this makes the analysis of this reactor very, very interesting. Let's see how. We'll use the following input and dynamical variables. Concentration of the reactant in the, so let's try to write here. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is that you will have feed concentration. So there would be a concentration of certain reactant in the feed, that would be CF. There would be a flow rate, and that flow rate, molar flow rate, would be F per unit time. And the feed would be coming in with certain temperature, which would be called as TF. Okay. Now inside the reactor, the concentration, if you know how the CSTR works, there would be a sudden drop in the concentration inside the reactor because the reaction is taking place. So therefore you will have C concentration which would be lesser than CF. There would be temperature T inside the reactor. The volume of the reactor would be V, and the rate of reaction inside the reactor would be declared as R. And whatever is inside the reactor, the same would be coming out, and therefore you will have C here and you would have T here. Okay. Now we are using lumped parameter analysis, so we are not seeing any spatial variation. So therefore in the jacket, the fluid temperature would be Tj, the jacket temperature, which would be different at transient conditions from the T. And then you would have the flow rate of the jacket fluid as Fj. Okay, and this would be maintained constant. So this would be Fj, this would be Tj. Okay, Tj. Let's see. Do we need to declare anything more than this? Concentration of the reactant in the reactor, we have declared. Concentration of the reactant in the feed, we have reactor temperature, feed temperature, jacket temperature. 3 we have done. Constant volumetric flow rate, F. Have we denoted it as F? Yes. And this also would be F here at the outlet. Right. Then flow rate in the jacket, find volume of the reactor and rate of reaction. So every description which you need for this system is here. Okay. Fine. And if you need to know anything more than this about the reactor configuration or the operation, please feel free to point it out during or after the lecture. Now, the mass and energy balance over the reactor give the following governing dynamical equations. So what's changing with time? The concentration of the species is changing with time. So therefore dC by dt. How does it change with time? It changes with time because some amount of material is coming here with some concentration CF and a different concentration is going out. Right. So therefore, as the material flows in from here to here, there happens a change in concentration. Right. So that is the advective transfer which takes place. So first one is a advection or convection term on the right hand side. F by V. F by V will have the units of time inverse, and concentration difference divided by time inverse is the time rate of change of concentration. Minus R is the rate of reaction at which the species is getting consumed. Right. So that is the time rate of change per unit volume again. So this is the balance equation for concentration. Then the balance equation for energy. How does the temperature change? Again, the temperature would change because the feed is coming at some temperature, it is going out at some temperature. So as the material is flowing in this direction, you would have convective changes in the energy and that is given as this term F by V Tf minus T. Then what will happen? This in this direction the heat transfer is taking place because you are heating the fluid, or the heat transfer is taking place in this direction because you are cooling the fluid. So there would be this heat transfer, and that is given by the last term. U is the overall heat transfer coefficient. So basically UA delta T is the convective heat transfer coefficient, which takes into account the conduction as well as convective heat transfer between the fluids. And then finally what's going to happen is that there is a reaction which is taking place here. So if the reaction is exothermic, heat will be liberated. If the reaction is endothermic, heat will be consumed. So that will also result in change in temperature of the system. Right? Fine. So then what's to be done? For a given system, determine the steady state concentration profile. So let's see what happens to the steady state. You have two equations which are non-linear. All of these equations are non-linear. There is no reason for these to be linear, and therefore we have a case like this. You have a two-state system where you have a case which is exactly like this: dx by dt, where x is the concentration, dy by dt, where y is the temperature. So how would you determine the equilibrium or steady state solution? You will determine the equilibrium or steady state solution by solving or determining the null space. So let's see how does the equation look like. dc by dt is equal to f by v, this thing. So dc by dt was f by v c minus c feed minus r. Is that the case? Yes, fine. And secondly, dt by dt equals this term, dt by dt, d by dt equals f by v. It would be the same term, t minus tf, then minus delta h upon rho cp, plus or minus, plus minus delta h upon rho cp times the rate of reaction plus.
Sir, hello sir.
Yes.
Sir, the first term you have written is T minus T, it's TF minus T, sir.
Okay, yes. So it would be TF minus T. Okay, thank you. And UA upon V rho Cp. So UA V rho Cp, this will become mass times T minus Tj. Yes, T minus Tj. T minus Tj. Right? Now, the question is, what would be the steady state concentration and steady state temperature profile? This would be obtained by setting this is equal to 0 and this is equal to 0 and solving the above two non-linear equations important simultaneously. Right? We saw in the previous case, we solved these two equations simultaneously. We did not get one solution. We got, in fact, two solutions, right? So therefore, when you solve this equation, there is no guarantee that you will get a unique solution, which means there is no guarantee that you will get a unique steady state concentration in your system or unique steady state temperature in your system. Now that is tricky business because you maintain certain conditions, and then when you're trying to determine what would be my concentration in the reactor, at least mathematically, it is possible that you get more than one concentration or more than one temperatures. And how would you determine that? Well, you can solve this if you have, if I give you what is the flow rate, what is the volume, what is the heat transfer coefficient, and so on, you can plug the above equation. So I'm giving you the recipe. Plug the above equations. I highly encourage you to do that. And MTech students can do this very easily. They are doing this in their design lab in MATLAB and use fsolve. Just use fsolve and you will get the answer. But as I made a mention in the previous lecture, your solution would depend very strongly upon the initial guess which you have given to your system, right? The initial guess that you give to the system can change your steady state solution. So let's see. So what can be the range, possible range? What is the possible range? Now you have to give initial guess. Initial guess for C, for example. So what is the maximum C in the reactor? What is the maximum amount of the material which can be present in the reactor? Well, this can happen if there is no reaction which takes place. So it is simply acting as a vessel, no reaction takes place. So the maximum C which you can have is equal to, this is equal to C feed. Okay, C feed. And minimum, well, minimum we know is 0 at a condition where all of the reactant gets consumed. So therefore the range for C, so the range for C for initial guess is in 0 to Ca feed, right? What about temperature? So initial guess for temperature. So the minimum temperature that you can have, well, if nothing is there, if you are not, so suppose you have an exothermic endothermic reaction. If you have an endothermic reaction and you do not heat the system, what will happen to the temperature of the system? Well, it will go to the room temperature, right? So the minimum T is the room temperature, and maximum is something which you can do as a rough back of the envelope calculation, that what is the total change in the concentration. For that total change in the concentration, how much amount of heat energy would be liberated, and you divided it by rho Cp V, and that will give you the temperature rise, right? So you can do a calculation to get T upper, right? So you will have room temperature to rough T upper calculation. Okay, and then what you can do is, ideally when you solve this, solve for multiple initial guesses. And for this particular system, since I have not provided you with heat transfer coefficient or volume of the reactor or rate constants and so on, I am telling you that for this particular case, you will get 3 solutions. Okay, there are not 1, there are not 2, but there are 3 solutions to the system, right? Now you see why, let's try to understand why do you get these 3 solutions, right? So what happens at steady state? So let me copy paste. These are very large equations. So what happens at steady state? At steady state. Okay, so at steady state, these two are 0. So I can simply rub this off. I don't need to worry about this. So this is equal to 0. Let me rearrange second equation. Okay, let me rearrange the second equation. So I can rearrange the second equation as minus delta H upon rho Cp R equals F by V T minus Tf plus UA V rho Cp T minus Tj, and this can further be simplified as minus delta H rho Cp. Rate of reaction can be written as the pre-exponential factor e to the power minus delta E upon RT times the concentration. So this is the steady state concentration, e to the power minus delta E upon RT steady state, right? So this is the left hand side, and the right hand side can be written as F TF steady state, the steady state temperature in the jacket, by V plus U, in fact minus U A T jacket steady state upon V rho Cp times, that's it, no times, plus F by V plus UA upon V rho Cp times temperature, steady state, right? Everything is at steady state. Okay. Now let me analyze what's going on in this expression, what's going on in this equality. Okay, so here this is the term which has reaction rate, which means this is equal to the energy generated. Well, it can be consumed as well. Don't worry about that. Energy generated or consumed due to the reaction. Right? This much amount of energy would be generated by the reaction. Now, what is this? This is, in fact, the entire right hand side is the convective energy transfer, right? Which comes from convection of reaction mixture plus jacket heat transfer, right? And these two become equal. So intuitively, does it make sense? Well, yes, it does make sense, because whatever volume of fluid you take, there is C in that, and this is generating heat, which means it is increasing the temperature, right? And then there is material coming in and there is material going out, and then this is also bringing about. So this is E in, E out, and at steady state, the amount of energy generated by your reaction becomes equal to the amount of energy which is taken out from the system by the jacket, or in the reverse manner, the amount of energy which is consumed by the reaction is equal to the amount of energy supplied by the jacket fluid and the convection of the reaction mixture. So these two become equal, right? When these two become equal, I get this highly non-linear transcendental equation, right? So then what should happen? On the left hand side, I have Ts of the left hand side and I have Ts of the right hand side. And at equilibrium, when this condition is satisfied, these two should match, right? So the left hand side should be equal to the right hand side. Now you can actually solve this. You can solve this again using fsolve or MATLAB or even Mathematica. But there is an easier way to analyze this situation. Okay. How does my left hand side look like? Okay, so let me copy paste this. C. Control V. So this is my left hand side. Left hand side. And this is nothing but some constant. All of these are constants. All of these are constants. So some constant times e to the power some other constant upon t, right? But what about CS, steady state concentration? Will the steady state concentration also depend upon temperature? Yes, obviously, because the rate of reaction depends upon temperature. So steady state concentration will also depend upon temperature. How do I, whoever has the mic on, please put it off. So how would I determine the steady state concentration? Steady state concentration is very easy to determine. Let me copy paste this. Right. So I can write this as nothing but F by V C steady state minus C input steady state minus R can be written as K0 e to the power minus delta E upon R T steady state C steady state, right? And this would be equal to 0. This would be equal to 0, which means that C steady state, let me write here if I am correct, F by V C steady C F steady state divided by F by V plus K0 e to the power minus delta E upon RTS C steady state, right? And this is what I will plug in here. I'll plug in here, which means my left hand side is simply, I mean, I don't worry about a lot of these different constants, will be of the form A e to the power minus 1 upon Ts divided by B 1 plus e to the power minus 1 upon Ts. You can make this 1 upon Ts also as C and C. So I have combined a lot of these parameters. So this is the left hand side. How does right hand side look like? So this is right hand side. Control C, let me copy paste here. So this is the right hand side is equal to right hand side, and right hand side is similarly just so this entire thing is a constant, so A plus this entire thing is a constant BT, right? So now the intersection of these two lines, of these two left hand side and right hand side, will tell me the solutions, and that can help me determine whether I will have a single solution or a multiple solution. Okay, so let me do this. Let's see if we can do this. So left hand side, f of x equals a e to the power minus, I don't care about c, it's not going to affect. You can do it at home to cross check, upon x divided by b plus the whole thing. Control C, Control V. Let's see. Yeah, this is how it looks like, and I'm bothered about this, right? Can I change this? What is A doing? Well, it's not doing anything. What is B doing? It's not doing anything. It is just changing the magnitude. So I really do not need to worry about A and B and their magnitudes. All it is doing is it is just changing the changing how fast it is rising. Okay, so this is my left hand side. What is my right hand side? Right hand side is very simple. G of x is c plus dx. Okay, fine. Let me adjust these values, and yes, you see here. Okay, now you see in this case, the two cases are intersecting. The two functions are intersecting at one point, right? So how many solutions will you have? You will have only one solution, right? But is that always true? Well, I can do one thing. I can very carefully adjust this. I have to make it more horizontal, and then I have to shift this. Yes. Minus 0.5 to 0.5. Yes. You see here. Now what's happening? There is a combination of parameters which is resulting in 1, 2, and 3 solutions, right? So again, the question was for a given system, determine the steady state concentration profile, and same is true for steady state temperature profile. You see here, you can have one solution which we saw. You can have three solutions as well. The maximum number of solutions is 3. You can have 1, you can have 2, you can have 3. Now you see what happens when you have these multiple solutions, and on why this particular case becomes interesting. So my solution looks something like this. So here you have one solution. Looks like this, and obviously I will make it more drastic so that you can see it clearly. And no, I shouldn't make that drastic. Yeah, I think this works well. So now you have 3 solutions, which means you have 3 steady states. So you have steady state 1, you have steady state 2, you have steady state 3, right? Now what the problem is this, that you have, when you have 3 solutions, you now need to determine whether these solutions are stable solutions or unstable solutions. Okay, that is important. This simply means that if you are at steady state 1, the temperature concentrations are not changing with time. If you are steady state 2, the temperature concentrations are not changing with time. If you are at steady state 3, the temperature concentration is not changing with time. That's not the problem. The problem is that even if you have a small change in these steady states, are you going to come back to the original steady state, which means that the steady state is stable, or you're going to move away from the steady state, which means that the steady state is unstable? Well, if you remember what we did in the previous class, we'll start with one particular value of the function. Let's say your initial value is here. Okay, and then you are trying to find out whether the system will evolve with time and settle to a particular value or it would diverge, right? So now the system, since this at this point the system is transient, right? The system is transient. At this point the system is at steady state. System is at steady state, and here also the system is at steady state. So now the question is, where would the system settle? Whether it would settle to higher point or lower point. So what was our recipe? You start with the function, go horizontally, then again move towards the function, go horizontally, and so on. Which means that you will settle here. In other words, this is a stable equilibrium solution, right? You're always moving in this direction, which means that this is unstable. But maybe that is because the conditions were at lower end. Let me do this thing. Let me start from here. Again, what do? You move towards the function, towards the other line, straight line, and you keep on doing this, and what you will again see is that you have this point, this solution as stable, and this one is unstable, right? Which means that you in principle have three steady state solutions, right? You have three steady state solutions in your system. And what you're trying to do is that you're trying to maintain one particular steady state. Now the question is, if you want to maintain this steady state, can you maintain? So the question is, can you maintain steady state 2 in your system? The answer is no. You will never observe the system there. So now where would the system be? So where would the system be? Right? Well, it's very simple. It would be either at steady state 1 or steady state 3. Fine. Well, this is very simple to answer. Now the question is, what is the underlying physics which is going on? Now the problem is that steady state 1 or steady state 3 will correspond to either lower temperature or higher temperature. So your solution, so you will have three solutions for temperature, right? T lower, T intermediate, and T higher. T intermediate is unstable, T lower is stable, and T higher is also stable, right? So you wrote all nice equations for your reactor design, your reactor model. None of them would actually work if you do not know this dynamics. You will have three solutions. The intermediate temperatures will never be attained, because even if you have small fluctuations in your system will settle to higher temperature system or lower temperature system. Now, as a control engineer or as a plant engineer, this is important. to know where it would settle? Well, from this diagram, you will know that if your initial temperature is lower than this steady state temperature, you will settle to this point, and if it is higher than this, you will settle to this point. Now, this means that your reactor will either, depending upon your initial condition, be a cold reactor or it would be a warm reactor, right? Now, the question is, which condition is desirable? Okay, and the answer to that question depends upon what you are trying to address. See, if you are trying to address the economics of the problem, if your low temperature is your room temperature, your reaction will never take place, and therefore doesn't matter how much amount of heat you are providing, jacket you are providing, your whole system is getting quenched to room temperature and your reaction is not taking place. This means that your process is uneconomic. But so you would like the temperature to settle to a higher temperature, but now the question is that higher temperature a safe operating temperature of the system? So when you design your reactor and when you design the material of construction of your reactor, you have to make sure that the higher temperature, which is the steady state temperature or the steady state solution of your system, should be able to absorb that amount of energy, and your system should still be safe. Right now, when you come to this equation, not here, when you come to this equation, what you see is that you have a jacket temperature here, right? And for the same jacket temperature, right, this phenomenon is very interesting. For the same jacket temperature, you are getting 3 reactor temperatures. So you are solving this equation. You are plugging in the same value of jacket temperature and you are getting 3 solutions for the reactor temperature, which means that my function for jacket temperature would look something like this. So this is my jacket temperature. So what would you do as a design engineer? You would like to know how much amount of fluid should have flow through the jacket and what temperature the fluid should have, so that I can maintain a particular temperature inside the reactor. That's what you will do, right? And you would expect, if the system were linear, you would expect that if I send a particular flow rate at a particular temperature, I should get a particular temperature inside the reactor. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that for the same jacket temperature, same jacket temperature, you are getting 3 temperatures of the reactor. Okay, so this is the temperature, steady state temperature of the reactor. Lower temperature, middle temperature, and the upper temperature. Okay, lower temperature, middle temperature, and upper temperature. Does this always happen? No, this is happening only under this condition. This is happening only under this condition when you have 2 solutions, when you have 3 solutions. You can as well have a condition where you have only 1 solution or you have 2 solutions. How are these changing? These are changing as a function of these parameters in your system. Again, these are changing as a function of these parameters in the system. So therefore, your system solution, your diagram would look like this. It may be like this. So initially you will have only a solution which would look like this, which means that I have only 1 solution. Okay, I have only 1 solution, and this is the, so you fix in a jacket temperature, you get a reactor temperature. As you go on changing the parameters in the system, you move from here to here. Okay, so there would come an intermediate situation where you will have exactly 2 solutions. So that situation can be depicted something like this. Here in this case, you have two solutions, one solution and two solutions, second solution. And then you go on, as you go on, so you will have more and more such conditions like this. Okay, and this is called cusp catastrophe. Okay, this is called CUSP. This is called cusp catastrophe, in which you see that you maintain certain conditions in the reactor, in the jacket, and the reactor temperature changes in a very unexpected manner. There is no control of your reactor temperature depending upon the value of the temperature which you set to your jacket. And why does this happen? All of this happens. So let me ask you this question, that why is this entire thing happening? This entire thing is happening because of one simple fact, that you have two curves here. The first curve corresponds to the heat removal curve, and this heat removal curve is a straight line. So heat removal curve is a straight line, or even if those parameters in those constants C and D are non-linear, their dependence on the temperature. For example, you have heat transfer coefficient and you have density, you have what other parameters you have? There are several parameters which are associated with it. So what are the parameters? You have volumetric flow rate, which can vary a little with temperature. You have density, you have specific heat. All of these are functions of temperature, but their dependence upon temperature is very weak. So for all practical purposes, this line will always be a straight line. Okay, so it's not a problem, but this line, the other curve, is highly nonlinear. It is highly nonlinear. So when you do this, this line is highly nonlinear because this involves an Arrhenius equation, right? So you have the Arrhenius term here. You see the Arrhenius term here, and this Arrhenius term is highly nonlinear. So even if the change in temperature by 10 degrees centigrade will not change your density drastically, but it will change your reaction rate almost to a double value, right? So therefore, you can never expect this particular non-linear curve to ever go to linearity. And since there is a non-linear function here, which is intersecting with a linear function, it is possible that you have multiple solutions. And therefore, the key reason for bifurcation, so the key reason for bifurcation in reactor dynamics is the non-linearity of your rate expression. And that rate expression can, the temperature dependence of that rate expression can never be made linear. And therefore, you can never circumvent this particular problem. The final comment for today, have we seen this type of bifurcation beforehand? Let me see. You have, in this case, one solution, then two solutions, and then three solutions. Let me change this also. You have two solutions, and then you have one solution, and then you have three solutions. What kind of bifurcation is this? This is nothing but the saddle node or tangent bifurcation, which we saw in the previous lecture. Okay, so whatever we see from a mathematical basis has a very, very elegant application in our process dynamics and process industries as well. Okay, fine, we will stop here. If you have any doubt or any question from today, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we are done for the day. Okay, if not, thank you. We will meet again next week.
Thank you.